Okay, good afternoon. I'm Liz Sutherland, Director of Policy at ONN, and I'm here with Darnell Harris, who's the Operations Manager of Parkdale Neighbourhood Land Trust, and Joshua Barnt, who's the Executive Director of the Parkdale Neighbourhood Land Trust. Welcome, Darnell and Josh.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So as many people know, the pandemic is highlighting the urgency of preserving and creating more community-owned space to keep life affordable and allow people to stay in their neighborhoods. When tourism collapsed and the rental market softened a bit in some areas, nonprofits seized the opportunity to transfer rooming houses into community hands and provide decent, supportive housing that would be permanently affordable. So our speakers here today are focused on nonprofit real estate solutions to make sure that permanent housing affordability is there for community members. So let's dive in with Darnell and Josh. First of all, so we've talked before with a nonprofit driven audience about community land trusts a bit, but perhaps you could remind folks briefly, what is a community land trust and how did Parkdale's get started?
Thank you very much. So a community land trust is a nonprofit corporation that holds and stewards land on property on behalf of the community, ensuring a focus on the community's priorities. So the land trust therefore removes land from the private market and holds it on behalf of the community. Now, Parkdale's Neighborhood Land Trust seeks to enable long-term community benefits, affordability, and democratic local planning. The roots of Parkdale's efforts were seeded in 2010 through the Parkdale People's Economy, who were seeking to alleviate food security issues through a community land trust model at that time. Gentrification and real estate speculation were increasing, and people in Parkdale were looking for a community development model that would really protect important community assets. As land values increased, low profit land uses were being pushed out and community assets were being lost. Through a series of community consultations that engaged over 100 community members and stakeholders, the idea of a community land trust really began to evolve into an initiative focused on enabling community-owned land and alleviating poverty through affordable housing. Now, of course, Parkdale didn't invent this model. The CLT model has its roots in the American Civil Rights Movement, and it was inspired by historic CLT organizing efforts in Boston, New York, Los Angeles, and Oakland. Now, a major point of interest for Parkdale was that CLTs were membership-based organizations that were truly community-controlled. A major point of interest was that CLTs were membership-based organizations that were community-controlled. At first, we didn't have a formal membership, so in 2014, an interim board was set up with appointed representatives from 7 local organizations, including PARC, the Parkdale Community Legal Services, the BIA, West Neighborhood House, Greenest City, and more. Between 2015 to 2017, it began to focus on organizational capacity building, developing a community-based governance model, a broader-based community membership, and co-leading a community planning effort focused really on equitable development. Planning, of course, helps identify priorities such as rooming house preservation. So in 2017, with the community funding first in, the Land Trust acquired its first community-owned property, the Milky Way Garden, which you see there, which is now operated by Greenest City as an urban agriculture space for Parkdale. Just over a year later, in 2019, the Land Trust acquired its first residential property, which was a 15-unit building as a rooming house preservation pilot project, which you may have seen in the news.
Yes, it's so exciting.
Now, so while we started off slowly, our work is really beginning to rapidly pick up speed. On November 11th, our members will consider approving a new 5-year strategic plan that will propose a concrete method to scale our impact, to see the Land Trust bring 300 units of affordable housing under community control by 2026.
Wow, that is, yeah, ambitious and exciting. So, I mean, how has the pandemic affected your neighborhood in terms of housing? And how has the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust responded?
Well, the ongoing pandemic has certainly deepened housing issues in Parkdale. The economic upheaval caused by COVID-19 and the end of a freeze on evictions has led to increasing numbers of people at risk of homelessness and displacement. Over the past decade, more than 28 rooming houses have been lost permanently to gentrification and upscaling, dehousing over 350 people. The pandemic has only made things worse, of course, as COVID has forced additional capital into real estate, increasing the pressure on low end of market rental housing, such as rooming houses. Many of our neighbors are now at risk of eviction in the middle of a pandemic. So, Liz, we've responded on two fronts. Firstly, we are working to support tenants to maintain their housing through this crisis. Through a proactive eviction prevention program, our staff support rooming house tenants in over 59 buildings to defend their tenancies by providing legal information, service referrals to legal clinics, and support forming and maintaining tenant associations. Secondly, the Land Trust is working hard to acquire at-risk buildings to bring these buildings into community ownership. Now, this builds on our PEP program by allowing existing tenants to maintain their affordable housing. When we have vacancies, we can prioritize these units to people exiting homelessness. So that's why, responding to the fact that neither federal, provincial, or municipal governments have funding programs that are designed to support the acquisition of at-risk rental housing, we responded to this gap by partnering with Van City Community Investment Bank to launch an impact investment model called the Preserve and Protect Guarantee Program. Funded by charitable foundations through a GIC, the funds will allow the Land Trust to act quickly to compete with private land buyers and move valuable housing stock in community hands. So far, we've raised $4 million in investments from foundations such as Atkinson, Metcalf, Echo, and Fairmont.
Well, that's exciting. So this financial arrangement basically means that you have capital ready when there's an opportunity available. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay,
it allows
right.
us to be able to act quickly and compete in the housing market, which would otherwise struggle to do.
Okay, that makes sense. So can you tell me a bit about how you engage community members in the governance and operation of the Land Trust?
Sure. Community engagement, of course, is the core of the Land Trust approach going back to its founding. We have over 800 registered members now, some of whom you can see here, who will participate in our work through events, volunteer committees, and through our board. At the Land Trust, the community is in control. The board of directors is made up of members who have been elected by other residents. Through our board of directors and board committees, we have designed a governance system to ensure that Parkdale community members, users of our lands, and community partners all have a voice as we seek to build a just, healthy, and inclusive neighborhood and society. We also focus a lot of energy on providing education and capacity building opportunities for our members. This year, we held 7 anti-oppression workshops, 3 trainings on affordable housing development, and a series of webinars on community land trusts.
Wow, oh, that's impressive. So I'd like to go back to this new financial agreement that you have. What is that going to mean for affordable housing in Parkdale? And how do you anticipate it working from here? Where are you going to move with it? Do you know?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Liz, for the question. I think I'll take it from here.
Sure.
My name is Joshua Barnt. Again, I'm working for the Land Trust, and I have the responsibility of designing and implementing new projects, so new acquisitions. Darnell mentioned before that in 2019, we did undertake a pilot program to prove that it would be possible, but also economically efficient to acquire at-risk rooming houses and convert those buildings to nonprofit-owned buildings in community ownership. We did complete that pilot, and we're looking to scale up our model. We want to repeat it. We know that there are many buildings at risk in our community. There's an overwhelming demand for affordable housing, and we want to make sure that we can provide that we think that the most economically efficient way to do that is to purchase and improve the existing rental housing stock. The key challenge that we're facing, though, and that has led to multiple failures in our acquisition projects over the last 4 years, has been that while there are existing affordable housing programs from all levels of government, none of them actually provide funding for acquisitions. You have to, when you're applying for a grant program, you generally have to already own the properties. And also the decision-making process of government usually takes 4 to 8 months. In contrast, when a building's up for sale in the market, it will sell within a few months. Right. And so, if we want to compete in the private market, we have to act quickly, and we need money to do so. So we explained this problem to Van City Community Investment Bank, and they decided to partner with us to help develop a new and innovative solution to fill this gap. So together with Van City, we've designed what's called the Preserve and Protect Guarantee Program. It's an impact investment program where institutional investors can invest money, which then can be used to loan to us, to the land trust, to be able to act quickly to acquire at-risk buildings. And what this means is that we're going to be able to act quickly to save the housing before it's lost, and to bring projects forward in our community much faster than would otherwise be possible. So in the next few months, we actually plan to acquire a 20 to 40 unit building. So that's 20 to 40 new affordable units that will be available in community ownership, and that, if all goes well, will stay affordable permanently. Okay, that's fantastic. And just so you know, we're actually going to be talking about foundation impact investing later on in this series. So there's a nice connection there. If foundations want to get involved, this is a great way they can make those kind of impact investments in their own communities. Wonderful. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I have one more question for you. I'm wondering about what advice you might have for our nonprofit audience and the communities they serve around Ontario that want to seize this moment and preserve affordable housing using a community land trust model. What advice would you have for them? Yeah, thank you for the question. So, we are all feeling the huge burden of housing and homelessness crisis that has only been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic. And, we're all trying to think of how we can implement important affordable housing projects in our community. There are many models to do this. For many decades, we've seen the success of nonprofit housing owned by faith-based groups. We've seen the success of cooperative housing and the success of public housing. So there are many social ownership models that have provided good housing to people in our communities for many decades. So, the easiest way to develop housing is actually to implement one of the existing proven programs that is more common and understood. Okay. So, we encourage people to look, to consider what they're trying to accomplish and consider the existing models. Mm-hmm. However, there are communities out there, such as Parkdale and many other communities, in fact, that have turned the community land trust model as a more powerful community development model that can actually empower community members to take control of the land, to govern that land in a democratic way, and to implement new forms of equitable development. We find the model to be extremely powerful, and we believe it's going to have a long-term impact and enable all of those other types of housing I mentioned before. But we also recognize that the CLT is a complicated model, and that it takes a significant investment from community in terms of time and energy, as well as professional staffing. So we know that the model is not the right model for every community. And if I was a community out there considering a community land trust, I'd consider these 3 issues. One, do we want a community development model that is going to be community driven? If yes, then a community land trust might be for you. Are you interested in taking ownership of land and having the responsibility to manage that land well? If you say yes, then the community land trust model may be for you. 3, trust. Are you willing to implement a model which puts community members in control of the organization through a democratic process? 3, if you answered all of those questions yes, then community land trust model may be for you. If not, then it may be adequate in your community to implement just an affordable housing project or an advocacy initiative, or to get involved in local governance initiatives. So, you know, there's other streams that we think that communities should be self-reflective and strategic about what type of model they implement. If you'd like to learn more, you can check out our website at pnlt.ca. And we actually have a little bit of a guide on how to start a CLT from our perspective. If you go to CLT Toolkit, and you'll see our origin story and how we got started. So,
Okay.
you know, it's a great model, but it's a lot of work. So
Okay, it's not for everyone.
Prepared.
Okay.
But I think it's going to be very powerful. And
Yeah.
thanks so much for learning more.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Thank you so much. Really such a pleasure to have you both here. And thank you for speaking to our audience about your community land trust model, Joshua Barnt and Darnell Harris of the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust. Thank you both. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Colin.
Thank you. Take care.